Hey guys, my name is Dr. Larry Burchett. This is a video for pre-meds on how to get into medical school. I have I'm an ER doctor and a family doctor. I work as a hospitalist also. I went to college at Notre Dame, med school at Kansas, graduated in 2006 with the MD. I've sat on admissions committees and interviewed people in residency, so I'm familiar with this process. There's really two main pieces of advice that I have for you on how to get into medical school, and then one perspective. The first piece of advice, this goes out because I get a lot of kids coming to me and they're like, what do you think my chances are? And they want to talk about their extracurricular activities. Oh, I volunteered here and I went and did that and I had this experience. And I think a lot of these kids that start emphasizing that stuff know that their grades and their scores are a little weak and aren't where they should be. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear this. This is kind of the reality of how it is number one, the most important thing is what are your grades, what are your GPA? All A's are the best. A's, maybe some B's are okay. If you've got a lot of C's in there, you need to focus on getting that GPA and those grades up. This is my opinion. And then the second thing is your score on the MCAT and the admission test and all of that. I don't even know what the good numbers are anymore. 30, 32, 36 I think is really good. I don't even know if they do the same numbers. But number one are grades and scores. That is 90% of what we look at. And then that kind of gets your foot in the door. That gets you to the threshold where you can be considered. So where should you put your time and energy? You should put your time and energy into figuring out how do you raise your GPA? How do you get all A's? How do you get a good enough score? I'll talk about that stuff in a whole nother video, but I want to put the emphasis there. Yeah, extracurricular stuff is good. Everybody's got extracurriculars, something. Volunteering here, doing that, and some of the things that people have are for it to really raise your application. It has to be extraordinary. Let me tell you a couple stories. One, I remember interviewing this guy and I was like, why did you go to medical school? And he said, well, the nonprofit that I founded and was running in Africa, I realized I could do more as a doctor. And I was like, the nonprofit that you founded and ran? I felt inadequate in the moment. I was like, how did I get in here when we got guys like this? There are some extraordinary applicants that you're going to be up against. Those kinds of extracurriculars are going to open doors for those guys. I volunteered at the local nursing home. I think I did some cool things, but nothing of that top level thing that really, those are the kind of things that make a big difference. Grades and scores are really the thing that need to get you in, so focus there. The second thing that I would say on how to get into medical school is you need a mentor or a model. You need somebody, and I would recommend somebody who is in medical school, is in the medical school that you want to go to, get some kind of connection, relationship with them, and just ask them, or somebody who was pre-med at your college who got in and say, hey, how did you play the game? How did you get in? How did you get the good grades? What did you do in these classes to get A's in organic chemistry? And how did you beat the MCAT? Did you take Kaplan? Did you do a review book? Did you just take it? Did you just focus on your schoolwork? Whatever the answer is those days, the key is to get a model, somebody who has done what you want to do, and ask them, because chances are, if you do what they do, you can get their results. Do what they do, personalize it to yourself, make it your own, and get their results. But get it from somebody who knows immediately what that is like. So those are the two pieces of advice. Focus on grades and scores far more than extracurriculars, unless it is really outstanding, like cover of the Time magazine outstanding. Most do not have that. And then two, find a model or a mentor. Now the third thing I'm going to tell you is a bit of perspective. Take the other position of those of us who have been on admissions committees. We're normal people, right? We want to do this fairly. We want to give everybody the best shot at getting into this medical school. It's still an incredibly competitive. Most people who apply are not going to get in, and you have to be able to justify that as to why did you not let this person in versus that one. And so the easiest way to do that is by numbers, like grades and scores. What are their grades? What are their scores? Grades mean that you're smart enough to do it. Grades mean that you spent the time and put in the hard work to earn those marks. And scores, similarly, probably more just a test of intelligence and are you smart enough, but you can get better at taking that. But anyway, so you're looking at this and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants. Who deserves it, Adam over Sally, how do you weigh that stuff? And the easiest thing to do to keep it fair, because I think most of us want to be fair and we want to do right by you guys, is you have to have some threshold of grades and scores. So what I would do now, like looking back, I didn't do this at the time, is I would call these medical schools. So I would call KU and I'd be like, hey, what is your average, your median, your kind of 50th percentile GPA and MCAT score? Oh, GPA is 30, or GPA is 3.5, and MCAT score is 30, or 3.7 and 30, whatever it is. And I would make that, your baseline for what you shoot for. Now, let's be honest. Let's throw this in there. You probably want to be a little better than average because there are people who are going to have connections and legacies, and if you're a politician's daughter or somebody's famous whatever, they have special privileges, right? And those average of us are not going to have those kinds of advantages that are going to get you admissions to certain schools. At the same time, there are folks who come from disadvantaged backgrounds that are going to get, a little extra point on their application too, that's going to make them go up, even though their scores and grades may not be as good. So I would tell you, if you're an average applicant that doesn't have, a ton of disadvantage or doesn't have incredible privilege, if you're kind of in the middle, you would want to shoot to be a little bit better than average at least. Now this is going to vary from school to school, right? A state university is going to be way different than Harvard and Stanford up there. The bar is going to be incredibly high, but call them too and see what their criteria are. See what you can figure out and then kind of set that mark, and then you just hit those numbers. But again, just thinking from the perspective of how are you going to stand out. Don't do it as much with extracurriculars. Get those grades and scores up to that level, because we just see all of these things. So the way that it went when I was on these committees was, we would see a lot of packets, and there would be kind of the ones that were like, wow, all A's, like super student, wow, and those were impressive. Those were strong. Typically with higher scores, those were kind of strong candidates, so it didn't matter as much what they did. Then there was kind of the average good candidate, A's, B's, with a good enough score, because you can see you have all of these, you have this pool. So there's going to be people that are going to be kind of in the middle, they're good candidates, and then it's like, what did they do, what kind of person are they, that kind of stuff too. And then you're going to have the folks whose grades aren't as good, they got a handful of crummy grades, maybe they're and their letters just aren't going to shine like the other ones, and their scores aren't as much. So you get a spectrum, right? And this is why I'm trying to tell you to figure out what the middle of that is and then just shoot a little bit better than that. And so looking at these applications like that, if you've got 100 and you've got to narrow it down to under 50 for interviews, you're just going to say, look, I'm sure we can get rid of these guys that are not up to grades and scores. That's like the first cutoff, is grades and scores, goodbye. Unless there's something just incredible about their story, but otherwise it's goodbye, because usually you've got incredible stories, backgrounds, whatever, who have good grades and scores. So listen to this. That's my advice. Focus on grades and scores first. Maybe I'll do a video or two on how do you get good grades and how do you get good MCAT scores. I've got ideas on that too, how I would do things differently studying wise than I did back then. And anyway, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching this. Check out some of the other videos, and good luck. I hope you get in and get to pursue your dreams.